The sound of firecrackers exploded outside. As soon as a group of people pushed into my sister's room, they froze in shock. Two completely naked people were lying on the red wedding bed. Everyone stared in disbelief, and then all eyes turned to me. Because one of the people in that bed was the bride, my younger sister, and the other was my fiancé, Ethan Walker. My mom was the first to react. She screamed and shook the two of them awake, grabbing my sister by the ear in a furious rage. "Emily, are you insane? Today is your wedding day. How could you do something so disgraceful? Do you have no shame?" She slapped Emily hard several times to wake her up, but there wasn't a hint of remorse on her face. Instead, a flicker of smug satisfaction flashed in her eyes. Emily immediately knelt on the ground. "Mom, stop hitting me. Ethan and I are truly in love. I don't want to marry Carter Bennett. Please let me marry Ethan." I saw Ethan's ears turn red. I knew he was awake, but since he still had a shred of pride, he pretended to stay asleep and even pulled the blanket up when no one was watching. My mom was livid. "Emily, what nonsense are you saying? Ethan is your sister's fiancé." "Well, I already slept with him, and everyone saw it. If you don't let me marry Ethan, I'll jump into the river." Emily snapped back, looking utterly defiant and reckless. At that moment, someone came in and announced, "The groom's motorcade is only 2 intersections away. The bride needs to get ready." My mom was nearly hysterical. "Why would you choose today, your wedding day, to pull this humiliating stunt? How am I supposed to explain this to Carter Bennett?" Emily pointed directly at me. "Just let Lauren marry him instead." When I heard that, it hit me. Emily had been reborn too. Emily and I are twins. Because of our good looks, matchmakers practically trampled down our front door when we turned 18. To support our younger brother's education and help him get married, our mom arranged matches for both of us with 2 different families. One was Ethan Walker, the son of the village chief. The other was Carter Bennett, the richest man in the village. In my previous life, Emily had chosen Carter without hesitation. Even though Ethan was a college graduate, he was ugly, and his family was poorer than ours. The dowry they offered was borrowed money. The village chief was an honest man, upright but broke. Emily didn't even consider him. Instead, she married Carter. But things ended in disaster. They divorced within 2 years, and afterward, Carter's business flourished. He eventually became the richest man in the country. While Emily's life fell apart, I was the one who married Ethan. After college, he got a job in a government agency, and in just 5 years, rose to a top position. Because of him, I became someone the whole town envied. That's why, in this lifetime, Emily didn't hesitate to choose Ethan. After listening to all this, my mom sighed and turned to persuade me. "Lauren, what Emily did was wrong, but the Bennetts have already paid the dowry, and we used that money for your brother's tuition. With their background, we really can't afford to offend them." The Bennetts had a terrible reputation in the village. Carter's father went to prison for murder years ago. Carter himself dropped out of school after middle school and started running with gangs. He was always surrounded by thugs. His mother was rumored to be mute and never left the house. His younger sister had a violent temper and acted nothing like a proper young lady. Despite being rich, they could only secure the engagement by offering an outrageous dowry. Everyone's attention shifted to me. They all knew how deeply I loved Ethan. They were waiting to see what I would do. To their surprise, I didn't hesitate. I picked up the bridal veil and wedding dress and walked into the dressing room. Carter was in the clothing business and often traveled south to purchase goods, rarely spending time at home. He only wanted a wife to look after the house. Neither my mother nor Emily cared who he married, as long as someone took the spot. So when the wedding veil was lifted and he saw it was me, he didn't have much of a reaction. That night, he came into the room, reeking of alcohol. Before I could even open my mouth, I saw Carter Bennett pull a large duffel bag out of the closet. "I'm heading south for a while. Leaving tonight. You'll sleep alone," he said as he pulled 5 100-yuan bills from the bag and handed them to me. "This is your living expense for the next month. Take good care of my mom and my sister." I stared at the 500 yuan in shock. To put it into perspective, my entire family of 6 barely spent 20 yuan a month. Seeing the look on my face, Carter let out a short laugh and walked toward the door. I finally came to my senses and called out, "Carter." He turned around, frowning. "What, not enough?" Maybe it was his years of running with rough crowds, but despite his good looks, Carter gave off the vibe of someone with a short temper, like a mafia boss. Still, I stood up, rummaged through my dowry, and pulled out a tube of ointment. "It's the rainy season down south. You might get eczema. Use this if it acts up." He froze for a second, then took the ointment from me, looking at me with a complicated expression that lingered for a long time. "Anything else?" he asked. I nodded, then shook my head, hesitating. Finally, I mustered up the courage to ask, "Can I use some of this money to buy books?" Having lived a second life, I knew better than to rely on a man for anything. I had always done well in school. If Mom hadn't forced me to drop out for my younger brother's sake, I would have taken the college entrance exam too. It was that longing for education that made me fall so hard for Ethan Walker in my past life. He had a college degree. But what I didn't know then was that he was a fraud. His grades had been awful, and he only got into university by taking someone else's spot. The moment I thought about all the things I endured after marrying him, I got goosebumps. Carter must have misread my reaction and softened a little, as if he'd accepted my request. The next morning, I cleaned the house, made breakfast, and headed to the county town. I bought a full set of high school textbooks from the bookstore. The shop owner was in such a good mood, he threw in a copy of Don Quixote for free. He said, "This book just came in. It's incredibly rare in this country." I gave a polite laugh. Rare? Probably not. More likely he'd only imported one copy, and no one wanted it. When I got back home, I saw Carter's mother in the living room drinking water. I greeted her politely. "Hi, Mom." Her face flushed red instantly, and she didn't seem to know what to do with her hands or feet. In the end, she just nodded and tried to slip past me with her cup to head back to her room. But as she walked by, she suddenly stopped. Her eyes locked on the books in my arms, filled with curiosity and excitement. Noticing what she was staring at, I picked up Don Quixote and handed it to her. "Do you like this book? You can have it." I had simply wanted to get closer to Carter's family. I never expected what happened next. Her eyes turned red, and the very next second, she covered her mouth and started crying. I panicked a little, unsure what to do. Before I could say anything, a shrill voice rang out behind me. "What did you do to my mom?" I turned around and saw a girl with greasy hair and an ill-fitting outfit standing in the doorway. That had to be Carter's younger sister, Abby Bennett. Abby stormed over, shielding her mother with one arm and glaring at me like she wanted to eat me alive. "You shameless bitch. Did you bully my mom? If you so much as lay a finger on her, I'll have my brother throw you into the woods and feed you to the wolves." I didn't even have a chance to explain before Carter's mother opened her mouth and said, "It's not her. I'm just emotional." Both Abby and I froze in shock. "Mom, you can talk?" we said in unison, eyes wide with disbelief. Half an hour later, I finally learned the truth. Carter's mom could speak perfectly well. She had only been pretending to be mute all these years because she didn't want to deal with people. According to her, she despised socializing and only liked reading. But ever since Carter's father was imprisoned, her children never understood her. And the villagers mocked her constantly because of her family's reputation. That's why she became more and more reluctant to leave the house, and eventually stopped talking altogether. She could speak, she just didn't want to. But because she never went out, it had been ages since she'd read a new book. Listening to her, I was stunned. In my past life, I'd often heard Emily complain that her mother-in-law was mentally disabled. She'd gloat whenever she talked about it, proudly saying, "She can't speak, so I make her serve me tea and do chores. Just give her a steamed bun and she's basically a free maid." It wasn't until now that I realized how cruel Emily had been. Carter's mom wasn't unaware that Emily had been mistreating her. She had just chosen not to make a fuss. After hearing all that, both Abby and I felt a deep sympathy for the woman in front of us. Right away, we asked her to write a book list. The next day, I took Abby with me back to the county town, and we bought a pile of books. On the way home, I noticed something odd about Abby. She kept staring at a boy standing outside the bookstore. I'd seen that kind of look before, and knew exactly what it meant. Teasing her, I asked, "What's up? Got a crush on someone?" Her face turned bright red. None of your business. If you like him, go for it, I said with a grin. That one comment completely flustered her. He doesn't even like me. He thinks I'm ugly, she muttered. In my past life, Emily had once mentioned that Abby was like a toad, lusting after a swan. She had fallen for the top student in the county, but after being rejected, she cried at home every day. Emily got annoyed and introduced her to some thug from town, who not only slept with underage Abby but also cleaned out the entire Bennett household. That incident was what finally exposed all of Emily's horrible behavior to Carter. Furious, he divorced her on the spot. As I recalled all that, Abby had already stormed out of the bookstore in frustration. I chased after her and said, I can help you win him over. She stopped in her tracks, eyes wide. Really? I nodded. First, I took her to the public bathhouse for a proper shower. Then we bought 2 sets of new clothes to replace her dirty, ill-fitting ones. After that, we went to a salon and got her a cute bob haircut. Staring at her transformation in the mirror, she asked, Will he like me now? I shook my head. That's only the first step. What's the second step? Go back to school. I'd already asked around. The boy she liked was ranked number 1 in his grade. If you want him to notice you, you'll have to be number 1 too. Abby's shoulders slumped. I can't do that, I smiled. I can help you. From that day on, a new sense of harmony developed between me, Carter's mom, and Abby. I bought books for his mother, and she helped me with cooking and chores. After meals, the 3 of us would sit together in the living room. I tutored Abby in her schoolwork, while Carter's mom read quietly by the side. One evening, when Carter came home, he saw this exact scene. He cleared his throat, and Abby immediately ran up and hugged him. You're home. He looked her up and down in disbelief. What happened to you? Abby giggled. It's all thanks to Lauren. Carter looked up at me, and I blushed, quickly turning to head back to my room. Not long after, he followed me in. I heard about everything you've done these past few days. Thank you for taking care of my mom and sister. I waved him off. We're married now. Your mom and sister are my family too. No need to thank me for taking care of family. He paused for a moment, then suddenly smiled. You're making me catch feelings. From that day forward, his attitude toward me began to change. The cold and distant man he'd once been softened. Whenever he wasn't traveling for business, he made a point to come home. And every time he returned, he brought me a little trinket or gift. As time passed, we started to resemble a real couple. That's when I realized Carter Bennett wasn't nearly as scary as everyone made him out to be. In fact, sometimes he was even a little cute. Before I knew it, the day came for us to visit my family after the wedding. I wore a beautiful new outfit and carried several large and small bags. Just as I arrived at my parents' house, I ran into Emily, who was holding a modest bag with about 2 pounds of pastries. She was dressed poorly. Because of the scandal at her wedding, she and Ethan hadn't held a formal ceremony. The moment Emily saw Carter next to me, she lifted her chin proudly and strutted inside with an air of superiority. But to her surprise, my mom didn't even glance at her. She came straight toward us instead. She took the gifts from me and immediately began fussing over Carter, asking if he'd eaten, how the road was, if he was tired. Emily couldn't take it anymore. Mom, aren't you going to ask how Ethan's doing lately? My mom was forced to respond half-heartedly. Oh, how's Ethan doing? Emily lifted her chin higher. He just received his assignment notice. He'll report to the county tomorrow. I have a feeling he'll be a big shot within 5 years. By then I'll be Mrs. Ethan Walker. No one in the room reacted to that at all. She awkwardly turned her attention back to Carter. So, what's fun down south? I could tell she was getting annoyed. Lauren, she suddenly called my name. I looked up, sensing she had something to say. Let's go make lunch. In our family, men weren't allowed in the kitchen, so I followed Emily inside. I had just crouched down to light the stove when she leaned in close and said, Must be hard, taking care of the Bennetts. That mom and sister of his aren't exactly normal. I knew she was trying to stir trouble between me and Carter's family. It's not hard at all, I replied. His mom and sister are both really thoughtful. They help me with cooking and laundry. Especially Abby, she always shares her snacks with me. And I can sleep in as late as I want. It's way better than waking up at 5 every morning to take care of a house full of people. Her expression darkened. You'd only understand what being a daughter-in-law really means if you lived in the Walker house. Ethan's parents and both his younger brothers all relied on Emily. She had to do all the dirty and tiring chores. It had only been a few days, but her hands were already covered in calluses. She bit her lip, then let out a low, bitter laugh. I heard Carter left right after your wedding night to go do business. You know why he likes going south so much? There's someone in his group named Zoe White. He likes her. I froze. Zoe White, Carter's second wife in my past life. It was true. From a small-town entrepreneur to the richest man in the country, Zoe was always by Carter's side. Seeing my reaction, Emily pressed on. He treats Zoe way better than he treats you. Always keeps her close, gives her everything he has. There's a saying, right? Wherever the money is, that's where the love is. My chest tightened. I bit down hard on my lip. Just then, the kitchen door burst open. Carter walked in, his face dark and brooding. Emily instantly shut her mouth. She didn't have the best memories of him, and I could tell she was scared. In our past life, when they divorced, Carter had used a few methods to deal with her. Ever since then, even when she was poor and struggling, she never dared to mess with her ex-husband again. Carter walked straight over to her and leaned in, whispering something in her ear. Emily's face turned pale, then red. Her fists clenched tightly. "You bastard," she snapped, and stormed out of the kitchen. I stared at him, stunned. "What did you say to her?" He looked calm. "I told her if she keeps talking nonsense, I'll cut her tongue out." I didn't even know how to respond. Just then, my mom called from outside. "Lauren, don't bother cooking anymore. Carter said we're all going out to eat." I replied with a stiff okay and turned to leave, but Carter strode over and grabbed my hand. "What did you believe?" he asked. "The things she said, do you believe them?" I shook my head. "No." "Then why do you look so upset?" I thought for a moment and finally said, "Carter, if you really have feelings for Miss Zoe, I'm willing to step aside." Carter immediately tensed up. "Why would you even think that? There's nothing between me and Zoe White. I only let her manage the money because she's great at finances. She runs a business too. Besides her, there are several other people in our group when we go south. I don't like her. I really don't." His tone was so urgent, it startled me. We'd lived together for a while now, but this was the first time he'd ever said so much in one go. I nodded slowly and muttered under my breath, "If you ever fall in love with her, I'm okay with divorcing you." What I wanted to say was, "Please don't treat me like you treated Emily in the last life." But before I could finish, a warm pair of lips pressed against mine. Heat rushed from my mouth straight up to the tips of my ears. After the kiss, Carter still wore his usual stern expression. "I'll say it again. I don't like her. I like you." My head was spinning, and I wasn't sure whether it was from the kiss or the confession. From that day on, Carter began to keep his distance from Zoe. He took back the money he'd entrusted to her and handed it to me instead, saying I should be the one to manage it now. Worried that changing too much might affect Carter's fate as a future tycoon, I tried to persuade him not to sever ties over money. "Zoe's got a real knack for making money. She should be the one handling it," I argued. But no matter what I said, Carter refused. "I want to do the right thing. A married man shouldn't be mixing finances with another woman." I remembered reading news the year I died about real estate prices in the capital skyrocketing. So I took Abby with me on a trip to the capital, partly to show her the top universities and partly to use Carter's savings to buy a few apartments. After we returned, I heard Carter wasn't planning on partnering with Zoe in business anymore. That made me a little anxious. I remembered he made his fortune in our last life by starting a clothing factory, so I suggested he build one in our hometown. I even recommended a well-known designer and encouraged him to look into real estate as well. Yes, I admit it felt a bit like cheating, but I truly didn't want Carter to miss out on his future just because of me. He became busy managing the clothing factory, while I focused on studying for the college entrance exam. When Abby reached her senior year, I sat down with Carter and told him I wanted to return to school too. He raised both hands in support. It was my own family that tried to talk me out of it. "You're not young anymore. What's the point of going back to school?" they said. "Now that Carter's doing so well, you should give him a child to tie him down." That's how you keep a man. That's when I realized Emily's married life wasn't going well. The first year after marrying Ethan, the Walker family had treated her nicely. But starting the second year, they began pressuring her to have children. Around that time, Ethan got transferred to a city job, and Emily wanted to go with him. But the Walker family didn't want to lose their free housekeeper, so they rejected her request. She cried every day, complaining that she rarely even saw Ethan. How could she possibly get pregnant? But even if they were together, it wouldn't matter. Ethan was infertile. I didn't listen to my family's advice. When Abby started the school year, I enrolled with her. After a year of hard work, both Abby and I were admitted to top universities. Once she got to college, Abby finally started dating the boy she'd liked for so long. She hugged me, crying, "If it weren't for you, I wouldn't even have dared to dream this." We enjoyed a full year of college life. Meanwhile, Carter rose with the tides of the new economy. In just 1 year, he skyrocketed from the richest man in our village to the wealthiest in the entire city. When I came home for the holidays, I hadn't even gotten a chance to see Carter yet, because I saw Emily first. She was standing at the front door, and for a moment, I barely recognized her. She had lost a noticeable amount of weight. Her clothes couldn't hide the marks on her skin, and her eyes were filled with fear. Once a beautiful, spirited girl, now she had completely lost her glow. But I wasn't surprised. In our past life, I had nearly been destroyed by Ethan Walker, too. After Ethan found out he was infertile, he stopped even pretending to be a husband. At work, he acted like a bootlicker to his superiors. When Ethan couldn't take it out on me in bed anymore, he found another outlet: violence. He became bloodthirsty, even took pleasure in hitting me. At first, he would pick fights just to have an excuse to strike. Later, all it took was a look, and he'd throw whatever was in reach. Sometimes it was a cup, sometimes a chair. The moment he saw me, he grabbed my arm and blurted, "Lauren, you were reborn too, weren't you?" I steadied my breath and replied calmly, "What do you mean, reborn? I don't understand what you're talking about." But Emily wouldn't let go. She dropped to her knees right in front of me. "I know you were. Otherwise, you wouldn't have married Carter so easily. You wouldn't know how to help him so well. Please, sis, help me." She only called me sis when she was begging for something. Even though we're twins, just because I was born a few minutes earlier, I became the older sister. Our parents favored boys, so she and I grew up depending solely on each other. I truly saw myself as her older sister, always thinking of her first, always giving way. Even in our last life, when Ethan had nearly beaten me to death, and when he was about to divorce her, I dragged my broken body out of the hospital and got down on my knees to beg Carter for mercy. Otherwise, knowing Carter's temperament, he would have never let things go with just a scare. But what I never expected was that the sister I sacrificed everything to save ended up hating me. She envied me so much, she wanted me dead. All because I wore a clean outfit to visit her while she was sick. She poured her own blood and pesticide into my water. Before I died, I saw her smiling so brightly. "We're both sisters, Lauren. Why do you get to live such a good life while I suffer like this? It's not fair. If I have to die, then you're coming with me." Just remembering that made my heart harden again. "Emily, I can't help you. You'll have to find someone else." "No, you can't just walk away," she cried, her tears and snot soaking into my clothes. "Look at the life you're living now. Big villa in the city, your own car, dressed in designer brands, your skin glowing better than ever. That should have been mine. I gave that to you, sis. You swapped lives with me and now you owe me. You have to take responsibility." I snapped. "Swapped lives? What are you even talking about? Do you even remember how you ended up marrying Ethan?" Her face froze. Of course she remembered. She seduced him in secret, drugged him, and manipulated things until she ended up in his bed. Gossip spreads like wildfire in villages. Even though I married Carter in the end, that whole scandal still landed on me. People whispered behind my back, pointed fingers at me, cursed me. I was a victim too, so why did they throw my name into the mud right along with theirs? Emily stopped crying, her eyes wide in shock. Just as I was about to tell her to leave, she clung to me even tighter. "Lauren, I know you have a way to make him stop hitting me. You have to tell me. If you don't, I'll expose what Carter did in the past." I froze. What did he do? According to her, back when Carter was first starting his business, he smuggled illegal goods. If she reported him to the police, he'd be arrested for sure. I didn't know whether to believe her. If she really had something that incriminating on Carter, why didn't she report him in our past life when she was suffering so badly? Emily explained that when she and Carter divorced, he had already taken care of the issue. I thought back over the timeline, and what Emily said added up. For Carter's sake, I let out a long sigh and told her, "If you want to get away from Ethan, there's only one way. Go to the police and report that there's a body buried under the persimmon tree at the Walker family home." In my past life, when I finally couldn't take Ethan's beatings anymore and tried to divorce him, I went to his office and overheard something shocking. Everyone there called him by a different name, Mark Zhang. That's when I found out the truth. Ethan hadn't gotten into college on his own. His father had used his position to steal Mark Zhang's spot and let Ethan attend in his place. Mark was from our village too. He had no parents and disappeared 3 years earlier. After learning this, I accidentally overheard a conversation between Ethan and his father. Mark had discovered the truth during Ethan's junior year and confronted them. They killed him and buried him under the persimmon tree in their yard. I wanted to report it to the police, but they found out about my plan. At the time, Ethan held a high-ranking position, and since I'd shown up at his workplace, maybe he needed to protect his beloved wife image, or maybe he had other reasons. But after that, he stopped hitting me. Instead, he kept me by his side at all times. Even when he wasn't around, someone was always watching me. Seeing how desperate Emily was to escape him, I genuinely believed she would go to the police. But what I didn't expect was that instead of reporting him, she told Ethan everything. 2 days later, she rushed over, saying our mom was sick and I needed to come with her to the hospital. I got into the car with her, but before long, I noticed we were off course. "Where are we going? This isn't the way to the hospital," I asked, a sense of dread creeping into my chest. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. I froze. "What do you mean?" The car stopped in front of a rundown shack in the middle of nowhere. When Ethan stepped out from inside, I understood everything. I stared at Emily in disbelief. "You didn't go to the police." She pouted. "If I did, he'd be locked up. I just didn't want him to keep hitting me. I didn't want to lose him." "You're insane. I never imagined she was this far gone. Just to hold on to her position, she was willing to do something like this." "You sold me out," I said, trembling with fury. She looked at me innocently. "You're the one who told me about it in the first place." "Don't worry, Ethan just wants to talk," I snapped. "And you actually believe that? He's killed someone before." Emily shrugged like it was no big deal. And in that moment, I realized just how terrifying she truly was. The door creaked open. Even if I tried to run, I couldn't overpower a man. I was dragged out of the car and forced into the shack. Inside, the room was filled with tools. Ethan grabbed my face, his expression twisted with rage. "How do you know my secret?" I was shaking with fear. "I don't." He laughed. "Doesn't matter how you found out. You're not getting out of here today." He pulled out a rope and started tying me up. A wave of hopelessness swept over me. I silently cursed myself for being so naive. I'd already been betrayed once by Emily in my past life. How could I fall for it again? Tears streamed down my face. Just as Ethan raised a knife and brought it down toward me, a scream echoed from outside. The door was kicked open with a crash. Several men rushed in and tackled Ethan to the ground, and then Carter stepped inside, silhouetted by the light. The next moment, I collapsed into his arms. Feeling his warmth, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I burst into tears. Carter cupped my face gently, clearly heartbroken. He touched the cuts on my skin, his eyes filled with pain and tenderness. "Lauren, I'm sorry I was late." I shook my head. No, you came at the perfect time." From the side, Ethan suddenly screamed, "What the hell do you think you're doing? Do you know who I am? I'm someone in the city." But before he could finish his sentence, Carter kicked Ethan hard. Ethan screamed in pain, tears streaming down his face. "Carter, how dare you treat me like this? Do you believe I won't tell my dad?" Carter grabbed him by the hair and slapped him hard across the face, his voice ice cold. "Your dad? Cops already went to your house. He's been arrested." Ethan's eyes widened. That's impossible." Carter narrowed his eyes. Of all the people you could have messed with, you picked my wife. Soon the police arrived. They must have found the body buried under the persimmon tree. They came specifically to arrest Ethan. As they were about to take him away, he suddenly broke down and ran forward, grabbing onto Carter's pants and refusing to let go. The one who was supposed to marry you was me. I'm your real wife. Please, save me. I don't want to go to jail. Carter kicked him off, his face twisted in disgust. What the hell are you talking about? My wife is Lauren. You ruined your own wedding. You've got no one to blame but yourself. But I regret it now. You guys didn't even register your marriage back then. You liked me first, didn't you? I was wrong. I'll never do those things again. I'll take good care of your mom and your sister. Just be with me instead. He rambled like a lunatic, but Carter's expression didn't even flicker. Get lost. Don't ever show your face in front of me again. Eventually, Emily was taken away. Carter brought me home. He was silent the entire way, face stiff with anger. As soon as we got to the house, I was just about to step out of the car when he scooped me up in his arms. His friends started teasing us immediately, and I blushed bright red, burying my face in his chest. A minute later, I was pressed into the mattress. Carter hovered over me, but didn't make another move. Instead, he looked at me intensely. Lauren, what the hell is going on? When Emily came to find me, I had sensed something was wrong. So I secretly sent Abby to tell Carter everything, including the truth about the body under the persimmon tree. Carter knew a lot of people, and had many connections. It didn't take long for one of them to report that they'd seen me getting into a car headed toward the mountains. That's how he was able to track me down and save me in time. But he still couldn't figure out how I'd known Ethan's secret, or why Emily had said such strange things. I knew I couldn't lie to him. He was too sharp for that. So I told him everything. By the end, my voice trembled. Whether you believe me or not, I really have lived 2 lives. It feels like a dream, but it's real. The moment I finished speaking, he pulled me tightly into his arms. I could feel him shaking. I gently rubbed his back. What is it? I asked. How could he do that to you? He whispered. How could he hurt you twice? Only then did I realize he was angry because Emily had tried to harm me again. I don't understand it either, I murmured. Emily used to be so sweet when we were kids. Whenever she got something nice, she'd always share it with me. In our last life, even though Ethan was the village chief's son, he was ugly, and the chief was notoriously upright and poor. Their family was worse off than ours. They even had to borrow money for the betrothal gift. Still, when I got sick, he'd get sick too. If I twisted my ankle, he'd hold his own foot and say, Lauren, I think mine hurts even worse. Maybe it was those memories that made me tell Carter everything I knew. Carter stared at me, his eyes full of sorrow. So, I wasn't good to you in our last life either? Not exactly, I said. In that life, we were basically strangers. You had no reason to treat me well. I reached up and patted his head. For some reason, he was starting to feel more and more like a giant dog. I don't even know if, in this life, you'll still become the richest man in the country being with me, I said with a teasing tone. Carter lowered his head and gently kissed my hand. I'll do my best. And don't worry, everyone who's ever hurt you, I won't let them off easy. I nodded, then hesitated before asking, was what Emily said about you true? He sighed and tapped me lightly on the forehead. You overthink when you care too much. I'm a law-abiding citizen. Relieved, I finally let out the breath I'd been holding. As long as he was safe, that was all that mattered. Not even 2 months later, word came from the prison Ethan was dead. They said he slipped, fell, and hit his head. But the truth was, he'd offended the wrong people in prison and was beaten to death by a group of inmates. I asked Carter if it had anything to do with him. He smiled and shook his head. I told you I'm a law-abiding citizen. I just happened to visit some old friends before he got locked up. I'd heard rumors that Carter once had a friend who went to prison for accidentally killing someone. And back in those days, prisons weren't nearly as tightly managed. It wasn't unusual for someone to die inside. Since Emily hadn't actually participated in Ethan's crimes, her sentence was lighter. But even in the detention center, she suffered plenty. When she was finally released, she was a completely different person, mentally unstable and disconnected from reality. One moment she'd say she was the wife of a billionaire, the next she claimed to be the mayor's wife. Her family realized she wasn't well and had her admitted to a psychiatric hospital. This time, she asked for me, wanted me to visit her. I pretended not to hear. A few days later, she jumped from the hospital building. They said before she died, she kept mumbling to herself, "Let's do it all over again." Life went on, quiet and steady. Before long, Abby and I both graduated from college. After careful thought, I decided to pursue my master's and then my PhD. Carter said he supported me, at least, that's what he claimed. But on the day I enrolled, he dressed especially sharp and insisted on driving me to campus himself. In my second year of grad school, Carter made it onto the national wealth rankings, and we had a child together. Abby and her husband became civil servants. Their careers were thriving. The biggest surprise of all, Carter's mom published her first novel at age 50 and became a full-fledged author. In this life, I still lived gloriously, but compared to the last life, I was far, far happier.